Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We're super glad you're here. My name's Kirk from the OpenAI team. I work with K through 12 schools and higher ed universities both in the US and globally who are exploring ChatGPT for teachers, staff, and administrator use. I'm super grateful to be here leading this demo today. We were honestly blown away as a team by the turnout for the ChatGPT for Education 101 that we held earlier in this week. If you joined us then, welcome back. If you couldn't make it live to that session, no worries at all. We do recommend watching the 101 replay on the OpenAI Academy either before or after today, since it's such a strong foundation. But if you're already here, we recommend you stay for some really cool advanced features. Um, Quick recap of 101. On Tuesday this week, we focused on the basics, how to get started with your first chat, what makes a strong prompt, how to search the web, personalize ChatGPT, use voice mode, create written and visual content. Today is our 102 session. So we'll zoom in on practical use cases that we consistently see in K through 12 schools. We'll cover how to think about models in ChatGPT, how to use dictation, how to work with files and images, how to study with study mode, doing deeper work with deep research, organizing longer term work with projects, translating, and even more. A quick note before we dive in today, there's no need to take detailed notes. This session is being recorded and will be posted by the end of the week on the OpenAI Academy. If you can, we recommend having ChatGPT open in another tab so that you can try things as we go. We'll have a full hour today together. We'll see how far we get, and if we end a bit early, we'll have time for Q&A. So if you're able to send Q&A in the chat here, it'll go to our moderators, and I'll do my best to answer them towards the end of this session. One last call out before we jump in today. This week, we launched ChatGPT Essentials for teachers on Coursera. It's a self-paced course that goes even deeper than our 101 and 102 sessions and how to think about AI, how to use ChatGPT in your teaching practice or in your staff or administrative practice. You can find it on the Academy or directly on the Coursera website, and we strongly recommend that you check it out whenever you have the time. It's a great tool. And with that, we're excited to get started. Thanks again for being here and spending part of your day. So let me pull up my slide share here. Awesome. So before we jump into features and workflow, just want to spend a moment grounding everyone in what ChatGPT for Teachers actually is. This is a secure version of ChatGPT that's designed specifically for educators and schools. So your chats and your materials are not used to train OpenAI's models. Everything lives inside a protected school-managed workspace. A few important things to clarify because folks might be in different situations today. If you have already been contacted by your school district about getting access to ChatGPT, then there's no need to worry. Your district might already be in the process of rolling this out at a district level. And you will be invited into that workspace when and if it's ready. If you have no idea what I'm talking about and if you have not heard from your district, that is also okay. You can create a ChatGPT for Teachers account yourself and start using it today in a secure educator workspace with all the same security controls. And if your district later decides to manage access centrally, you will probably be automatically pulled into their workspace so that everything's in one place. You will not lose your work and you don't need to relearn the tool. What really matters is that you are using ChatGPT inside an education-focused environment that's built for teaching and not for personal use. This is a different license than the consumer one. So that's what enables the features that you'll see on this slide and that we're going to go through today. Things like working with files and images, using teaching-ready tools, personalizing how ChatGPT supports you, all while giving districts the visibility that they need to support responsible use in the case that they do decide to pull you into a district managed workspace. So for the rest of today, everything we'll show will assume that you're working inside the ChatGPT for Teachers product. So this context will help as we move through the examples. So before we dive into features, want to show you a few examples of how we're seeing most commonly ChatGPT being used across K through 12 schools today. We've heard this from the districts that we've recently launched to. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list, and it's definitely not prescriptive. So really think of these as starting points. So we'll start with lesson and unit planning. This is one of the most common ways that teachers begin. ChatGPT is often used to give a solid first draft on the page. Things like lesson structure, standards alignment, objectives, pacing, checks for understanding. The goal here is really speed and momentum. Instead of starting from a blank screen, you start with something concrete that you can react to, adjust, and then shape for your classroom. So you stay in control of the final outcome and you know best. ChatGPT can just help you start to get there a little bit faster. Next is assessment prep. So this is about creating things like maybe an exit ticket or practice questions or helping co-design a rubric or quick formative checks that are tied to your learning goals. Teachers are using ChatGPT to quickly check for understanding, to surface misconceptions earlier, plan more targeted instruction without necessarily spending hours writing everything from scratch. Then we have learning support, scaffolding. This shows up a lot in real classrooms. Teachers are using ChatGPT to rewrite materials at certain reading levels, clarify directions, create additional support wherever needed so that more students can access grade level content. Moving down to feedback, grading support. This is really about drafting feedback, comment banks, rubric aligned responses. Teachers are using this to improve consistency and clarity and to reduce the time spent writing the same feedback over and over while still making the final grading decisions themselves. There's family and school communication. This is a big one. Educators and staff are using ChatGPT to draft newsletters, emails, announcements in clear professional language, and then translate that content so it can be accessible to families across languages. So it's still your message, just easier to co-design with ChatGPT to create it and to adapt it. And then finally, on the administrative side of things, productivity is a big one. This is more staff and admin facing, of course, things like summarizing meetings, drafting planning documents, organizing notes, streamlining recurring tasks that might pull away time from instruction or from working with your colleagues. So the goal here is really to free up time for the work that benefits the most from human judgment and relationships. Note that none of this is all or nothing, right? So you do not need to use ChatGPT everywhere. Most folks in an education setting start by picking one or two areas where the friction is highest and just start there. For the rest of today, we're going to show how some of these use cases can come to life using specific ChatGPT features. I'll be jumping into the product and then you can decide what makes sense for you. So we're going to shift into the specific ChatGPT features that can bring these workflows to life. So one of OpenAI's big breakthroughs was really realizing that AI can give better answers to harder questions when it is given more time to think. So you do not need to know how the technology works to use this, but it does help to know what the concept of a model is. The simplest way to think about a model is it's just the version of ChatGPT that you are using, and different versions are better suited for different kinds of tasks. So think of it like a colleague for help. Sometimes you want a quick answer. Sometimes you really want them to sit down and think something through with you. So that's what a simplified model picker is doing in one of our more recent updates. So most of the time, ChatGPT will automatically be set to auto. Auto decides for you how much thinking is needed based on what you ask. So for the majority of teacher and staff work, like drafting, planning, rewriting, summarizing, auto is exactly what you want. It's on by default and you don't need to touch it. If you wanted something really quick and you feel that ChatGPT might be moving slower than you'd like, you can actively choose instant. This is great for small edits, for short rewrites, or when you want a faster response than it's giving. If you're working on something that feels more complex, requires more careful thinking, you can switch to thinking. This tells ChatGPT to really slow down and reason more deeply before answers. Teachers often use this for analyzing deep documents, planning more involved lessons, thinking through instructional decisions. And then there's Pro, which is the most advanced option, is often limited depending on the plan that maybe your district purchases. But this is for the most complex tasks like deep research or long form planning, where you want ChatGPT to spend the most time thinking. In an education setting, especially in K-12, we find that it's pretty rare to need Pro. So start with Auto. Most important thing here to know is you don't need to memorize any of this. If you use Auto, if you want faster, try instant. If you want deeper, try thinking. If you're tackling something big, thinking and Pro is there if you need it. As we move through today's examples, I'll let you know if I switch models, but we'll probably just stay on auto throughout today. This slide reinforces this idea most of the time. Again, auto is the default setting, so it's going to do the work for you. So now we're going to jump into the product, and I want to show you something really practical and one of the biggest unlocks for using ChatGPT well. This is something that us as OpenAI employees do all the time. So instead of jumping straight to asking ChatGPT to do a task, You can first ask it to help you write a better prompt for that task. This is especially helpful when you want to do things, but it might feel a little fuzzy in your head, or you don't know exactly what you want how to ask for the outcome that you know you want. So I'll show you what I mean with, I think, a pretty real K through 12 example. So imagine I'm a teacher who wants help drafting a weekly class newsletter for families. I know what I taught this week, but I want the tone to be clear, family friendly, easy to reuse week after week. So instead of guessing at the perfect prompt, I can ask ChatGPT to help me come up with one. So I'm saying, help me improve this prompt so it works better. And then I put in a pretty rough, kind of unclear prompt here about, hey, I want to write shortly weekly newsletters for families. It'll go home once a week. I give it a few details, but ChatGPT will help me write a better prompt here. So we'll let it think for a moment. So what'll happen here is important, right? I'm not necessarily asking ChatGPT to write the newsletter yet. I'm asking it to help design a reusable prompt that can fit my classroom and my needs. So you'll see it gives me a much more detailed prompt here. And once I have this, I can come back every week. I can paste this in my notes or themes. I can maybe create a GPT, which we'll cover later today. This same pattern can work for any sort of prompt you're trying to create in ChatGPT. We call this meta prompting here at OpenAI, but that's a pretty technical term that you probably don't need. It's the concept of using ChatGPT to build stronger prompts. So I could copy this, go into a new chat, paste it, and then press send. Top tip that can save a surprising amount of time. You don't have to type everything in ChatGPT. So you can just click the microphone and talk to ChatGPT instead. So let me show you what I mean. This can be especially helpful if you're thinking out loud, if you're jotting rough note ideas, moving between classes. A lot of teachers will use this when they're walking to a meeting or looking over notes, or when they just don't want to sit there staring at a blank box trying to get the wording right. I'll show you what this can sound like. So if we press this microphone button here and click dictate, help me turn this idea into something that I can use. This week I talked fractions, focused on equivalent fractions and number lines. And next week I want to reinforce those ideas with a short review activity. Please suggest a quick classroom activity that I can adapt for my students and keep it simple and keep it practical. So you see that it'll take a moment, but dictation is a great way to get your audio down into the chat. So now it's there. If you ever don't want to type a prompt, or if you're really on the move, this is a great way to move quicker. Next, I want to show you how ChatGPT can be great at interpreting images. So you can either drag and drop an image directly into ChatGPT, which I'll do in a moment, or you can click this plus button and it says add files is unavailable. Sometimes that happens during demos, but let me drag this in and show you what I mean. So here we're adding a file. You can either drag and drop an image directly into ChatGPT again, or you can press that plus button. I'm going to upload in this photo. It's a whiteboard from my class. So this could be notes that you wrote during a lesson, maybe something that you captured at the end of a day, or maybe even a board from another colleague's classroom. So instead of rewriting everything myself and drafting that myself, I can take a photo. You can also do this on the app if you have it. And I'll put this prompt. I'll say, look at this image and tell me what the main ideas are. Transcribe what you can see, organize it clearly, and point out any key themes. So we're experiencing a bug here, but this is why we upload things in advance. We are experiencing a bug. All to say, usually 95% of the time this will work. This is a great example that I'm actually kind of happy happened right now. Sometimes ChatGPT has bugs. This is something that we see all the time. Our support team is really wonderful at taking in reports of bugs and creating tickets that our engineering team can really quickly dive in and try to fix. So an example of this is happening right now. What you can do as part of your ChatGPT for Teachers license, if something like this happens, you're welcome to email our support team. They're an excellent set of super technical folks called our user ops team. You can reach them at support@openai.com. If this were to happen to me in my day to day, and I needed this fixed quickly, I could shoot them an email and expect a response pretty quickly. So all to say, in this example, I had taken an image of a whiteboard, had uploaded it to ChatGPT, and ideally it would be able to transcribe exactly what I'm doing. This can be really powerful for creating a digital record of what had happened in class. A lot of teachers often use this to turn whiteboard notes into something that they can maybe share, review later, build on a lesson plan, or just upload as like a digital footprint. Really great when you're thinking of like, okay, I know this means something, but I want to help make sense of it. Another way that we've seen K through 12 teachers really love to use this, especially elementary tools, is trying to use it in a little bit more of like a fun and interactive way. So you can snap a picture of something on ChatGPT on your phone, maybe like a leaf that you found outside at recess. You can upload it into ChatGPT and then ask it to help you identify that plant. Maybe talk about where it comes from, generate kid-friendly explanations that you can use in class. You can include a simple prompt like, tell me what kind of plant this is, and explain it in a fun way that might be relevant or exciting to a third grader. That's one of my favorite ways. I have some nieces and nephews at home, and I'm constantly walking around. We're learning more about the environment that we're walking through, oftentimes looking at leaves and flowers. So this next feature is called branching, and it's basically a way to say, okay, I want to keep what I have in one existing chat, but I also want to take it in a different direction without kind of getting in the way of this existing chat that I have. So instead of starting a brand new chat or copying and pasting text, you can branch off from an earlier response and build on it. So we'll show you a quick realistic example here. We'll go down to this example that I have preloaded. What I'm going to do is show you a message that I like. I like this message. I like the structure, but I want another version of it, right? So this is already written down here. I've created the short holiday message for parents, but I want another one that's directly for students. I want to wish them a holiday break. I want to wish them a great start to the new year, but I want it to be more child friendly. So what I can do here is click more actions, branch in a new chat. And what this will do is open up ChatGPT, and it'll create a new chat. And what I can do once this is created a copy is then paste, okay, rewrite this for third grade students, children of these parents, make it friendly, etc. When I press send, this will start to create a student-facing version of this while I still have my old chat that I can go back to. So a really great way to create two chats from the same existing one. We call that concept branching. And again, you can do it by clicking more actions into branch into a new chat. So for this next example, we'll see if ChatGPT accepts the file, but we do have a preloaded example here. This is a really common use case, and it's reading and ingesting contents of a file. So a lot of times the files that folks might be dealing with are not necessarily lesson materials. It might be things like policy updates, guidance documents, handbooks, PDFs that get emailed around. They're easy to skim past. With ChatGPT, you can upload those PDFs and ask ChatGPT to read it with you and help you focus on what actually matters. So let's say we have a district policy guidance that was recently sent to me. So we'll click in this example that I had preloaded. You'll see up here that I've created a prompt. I've said, please read this document and summarize the key points in plain language. Highlight anything that impacts teachers or school staff directly, call it any changes, expectations, any actions I should be aware of. And what I've done is taken this PDF and I've dragged it directly into this chat, and I had pressed send. And what you can see below is that ChatGPT is being super helpful, not replacing reading the policies carefully when you need to, but giving me a way to have a much faster understanding about what this document's about, where it might apply to me, where I might want to look a little bit more closely. A lot of educators are using file uploads to get oriented first on really dense documents, and then they can go back into that document with more confidence instead of maybe starting from zero. This works the same way, whether the file is like a policy or a curriculum guide or a handbook, maybe an article that someone shared that I don't have time to fully digest. ChatGPT can be great when you upload files and ask ChatGPT to summarize it. So this next example is probably more on the school and district staff side, though some teacher leaders might recognize this type of use case too. So ChatGPT can work directly with spreadsheets and data files. You do not need to know formulas, pivot tables, any sort of code to get value out of using this part of the product. So to show this, I had uploaded a sample CSV with fake student data. I'll open this chat. In this student data file, think of things like assessment results over time, grade level, subject, attendance, a few basic engagement signals. This is all a fake data set. Important part here is probably not the data itself, but kind of like the workflow here. So instead of opening up a spreadsheet, sorting columns, building charts myself, trying to make sense of everything, I can just upload this file and then ask ChatGPT to help me understand what I'm looking at. So the prompt I included is using this file, please help me understand patterns and trends over time. And then I tell it to look for a few different things and ask it to help me create clear graphs that can help visualize what's happening. So a few things to notice in ChatGPT's response, right? It'll show me a preview of the data so I can double check like what's actually in the file before it does any analysis. And then it starts to pull out patterns, creating charts on its own. I did not build a single formula or graph here. And just like everything else you've seen today, right, I'm in control. So I can ask any follow-up questions. I can zoom in on a specific subject or grade. I can ask questions about the file of data. I can also double click into any one specific trend that I see. What I love here is that it gives me key takeaways for my role. It tells me, okay, looking at this massive file of, I think I uploaded like 1,500 rows of data, it gives me some key trends that it's seeing and turns them into key takeaways. Awesome. Another really powerful way to use ChatGPT is with study mode. So study mode is designed to help you actually learn something, not just to get an answer. So it helps you practice, check your understanding, build confidence as you go. Idea here is it's not just for students. So we see teachers and schools use this all the time when they're preparing for things like accreditation reviews, policy updates, curriculum changes, any sorts of new instructional frameworks that they need to follow. You can think of study mode as like having a tutor or a coach on demand. It'll ask you questions, it'll react to your answers, it'll help you slow down and work through things a little bit more thoughtfully. It'll usually, most of the time, ask you a question to clarify what you'd like to learn before it starts to go in. So let me show you an example here. So we're going to open up ChatGPT. We're going to click this plus button. You'll find a lot of our features are behind this. And we're going to click study and learn. I'm going to put in this prompt. We'll read it as we go. I am reviewing the Common Core English Language Arts standards for grades 3 to 5. Test my understanding of the key skills students are expected to demonstrate and ask me questions an instructional coach or administrator might ask during a planning or observation conversation. So it's going to ask me a question first. I'll say, my comfort level is still getting familiar. ChatGPT's study mode will then go out and start to ask me questions. Really great way to go back and forth. If I were to respond to this in chat or using dictation or even using voice mode, ChatGPT will then go, it won't feed me answers. It'll instead have a back and forth. This is built on the Socratic method, and we think that this is really powerful in learning new topics. It doesn't jump to giving you the answer right away in the same way that a normal chat within ChatGPT would. Next up is a feature called Deep Research. As part of ChatGPT for teachers, if you're using that product, you'll get 5 credits of this, I believe, per day. So this is a really exciting feature. It's what you can use when you need to go beyond a quick answer and actually pull information together from multiple places. So it's designed for questions where you normally be opening a bunch of tabs, skimming a bunch of pages, trying to keep track of what you've already read. So in K-12, this is most useful for school and district staff, but teachers might recognize this type of work too. Really could show up anytime you're planning or making decisions or trying to understand options. A nice example that I'm going to use here today is grant research. So we'll go into ChatGPT, we'll click the plus button, and then deep research. So this is triggering this feature. So think about how grant research might usually work, right? You're searching online, you're clicking through a few grant sites. You're trying to figure out which ones even apply to your district. You're piecing together deadlines, funding amounts, eligibility, that process might take hours, especially if that's not your full job. So here I'm showing this example. You can hand that first pass to ChatGPT and ask it to do the scanning, the organizing, and the summarizing for you. So here I've put in find current grant opportunities that would be relevant for a mid-sized public school district focused on improving middle school literacy outcomes. And then I include a couple more details. When I press send, ChatGPT's deep research feature will always come back with a few questions first. So once I respond to this, it'll go out onto the internet and it will start to search. Because deep research can take anywhere from 5 to 20 to 30 minutes, even if it's a really deep query, I've pre-run one in advance that I'll show you here. I've run the same one. Let's talk through what this looks like. So again, it's asked me questions. I responded saying, I work in New York City public schools. I want to look at both federal and private foundation grants, and I'm looking at all student populations, but particularly those in large urban cities because I'm coming from New York City. So ChatGPT will respond, and then it'll go out on the internet and it'll start to look across sources, doing what we're calling research here. So the research here was completed in 13 minutes. Again, this can take usually anywhere between 5 to 20 minutes is the sweet spot. It's looked across 23 sources. It's included 23 sources, but done 62 full searches. So that difference there is searches that it's done, but sources that it's looked at and chose not to include in the final report. So if I ever wanted to look into what sources it did, you can click into this line here. It'll show me the activity. You can think of this as the thought process that it went through. So this OpenAI logo here will tell you what its thinking process is. It'll tell you exactly what its flow was. If you want to understand where it's going out, what decisions it's making as it encounters new sources. And then if you wanted just a dump of the sources that it used, here are the 23 sources here. And at the end of the deep research report, there is also citations as well. So looking through this deep research report, it's important here. So this is giving me a really well-formatted report. Think of it like research, right? It's not just giving me links, it's searching across multiple sources, it's collating information together, and it's organizing it in a way that's actually usable for a big decision. This is the kind of work that might take someone a full afternoon or longer, especially if they're not sure like where to start. And like everything we've shown today, right, you stay in control. So I can ask questions, follow-up questions here. I can click into any of the cited links here that it's pulled from. I can see the list of citations down at the bottom. And then I can also take this report and I can download it into an external format using this button here. I can share this with coworkers. Really, really incredible place to start if you need to collate information from multiple sources and you want ChatGPT to help you do that thinking. So now I want to show you projects. So these are really about staying organized and working over time. So a project will let you keep related chats, files, instructions in one place so that you are not constantly re-explaining yourself or digging through old conversations to find something that you already did. So for example, imagine I'm teaching 8th grade science and I'm co-planning a forces and energy unit with another teacher. So instead of having a bunch of disconnected chats, I've set up one project just for this unit. So at the top, you can see I've uploaded a few key documents here. You can add files using this button, but what I included was an overview of the unit, standards reference. I've included a worksheet, an assessment rubric of which I'm grading students by, and I've put in notes and feedback from last year's unit. So these are all informing any new chats that I create here. They will reference these files in their responses and they'll keep them specific to this project. So if I create another project, it's not going to reference these 8th grade science forces and energy unit files. These will all, the context here will stay specifically within this project. Because those files live here, right, we can reference them across any relative conversations. You can also see I have a few ongoing chats here that are pulling from that same shared context. This is where collaboration can be really great as well. Because everything lives in one project, my co-teachers and can work from the same materials. We can revisit earlier thinking, build on it as the unit evolves. You can see I've added my coworkers, Sam and Keelan, into this project. They can come in and create new chats. I have the ability to give them the ability to just chat, or they can also edit and add files. Projects are really helpful for any work that stretches over weeks or anytime you need to organize your thoughts. Another great example of this, right? Today, I just created this demo chats project. This is a backup in case ChatGPT wanted to act up on me, which it did when we were trying to upload files. But this is a really great way I can take several chats that I had created before and put them in one place. So you really can get creative. Awesome. So a really common way that schools are using ChatGPT is for translation in family communication. So when you're working in something like Canvas or Google Docs or another writing space, you can take that text and then ask ChatGPT to translate it. So you do not have to necessarily do it on an external tool. It can do it directly within ChatGPT. This is really helpful for things like a newsletter or an email or announcements or any quick reminders that need to go out in more than one language. What I really love about this approach is that your original message will stay exactly as it is. You can review the translation, you can make any tweaks you want, you can really send it out and feel confident about it. So let me show you what that looks like. You can do that in a basic chat. So I can say, translate the following into Mandarin, keep the tone exactly as is, and I'll put in an email that I had wrote. When we send this, you'll see that ChatGPT will translate it. Alternatively, if I wanted to open up the Canvas tool, if you haven't seen Canvas, we would recommend checking out our 101, but it's a really powerful tool. I'll say, let's open a Canvas for the following. I'll paste in this email. And what ChatGPT will do is open up a two-paned experience. And what I can do here is interact on the left with the product that's being created on the right. So this is a great way to edit. You can ask ChatGPT to transform this. What I'm going to do is maybe let's just highlight the first paragraph here. If you have a really long document, you just needed one portion translated, we can ask ChatGPT to translate this to Mandarin. You'll see it'll think for a moment, and then inline, it'll translate this directly to Mandarin. You'll see because I just highlighted that portion, that's all that's being edited. And then this last example, want to show you like a slightly different way to translate is to use voice mode. So this is especially helpful for real-time conversations, for any quick check-ins. So we're going to click this voice mode, not to be confused with the dictation button right next to it. Oftentimes users find that confusing. We'll click into use voice mode here. Translate between English and Mandarin as we speak. I'm meeting with a parent of one of my students who doesn't speak English. So if you hear English, translate it into Mandarin. And if you hear Mandarin, translate it to English. Hey, I wanted to let you know that school will be closed next Monday for a holiday. We hope your family enjoys the long weekend. This feature is incredibly useful when you want help translating on the spot. I recently took a trip out of the country to Armenia, where my family's from, and almost no one I knew or I had met had spoken English. And so I used ChatGPT voice throughout the trip to be able to translate. And it was really cool seeing folks' eyes light up, realizing that we could communicate despite the language barrier. So if you have any upcoming trips to new countries, would strongly recommend giving this a try. So schedules and tasks let you tell ChatGPT, okay, do this for me on a set cadence. It is not a to-do list. It's not reading your calendar. It's more like a recurring nudge or a recurring draft that shows up like when you need it. So we see educators use this for things that they already do regularly, but they hate having to remember or hates starting from a blank page every time. So I'll show you a concrete example here. Every Monday morning, run a task to create a brief summary of recent education and AI-related news that is relevant to K-12 teachers and school-based staff. I'm essentially asking ChatGPT to give me a summary every Monday. You'll see that it's thinking, it's thought, and it should set up a schedule and send me something every Monday. So now ChatGPT has created a schedule. And if I go into my workspace settings, I can see that it's created. Go to schedules, and if you want to manage any of them, you can click this button. It'll open up all of the schedule tasks that you've created. If things tend to get noisy at all, you can go in there, you can delete schedules and tasks. You can manage that all right within that part of the product. So to wrap up today, I want to spend some time on custom GPTs. This is where a lot of what we've talked about can really come together, and one of the more advanced but most used parts of the product. So the simplest way to think about a custom GPT is it's a version of ChatGPT that you design for a specific job. So instead of re-explaining your context every time or rewriting the same kinds of prompts over and over, you instead set the instructions once. So from that point on, ChatGPT will respond in a consistent way. It'll use the tone, the assumptions, the guidance that you've already defined. ChatGPT is especially useful for work that, custom GPTs are especially useful for work that is repetitive, maybe high stakes, where consistency really matters, and when you frankly don't want to rewrite instructions over and over. So let me show you an example of what that might look like for an educator. So this custom GPT I've created is called the Family Communication Helper. It's designed to help teachers, staff communicate clearly with families. So at the top, if we click into edit the GPT, and I'll show you how to create a new one from scratch in a moment. But when we open this, you'll see that we have the opportunity to name the GPT. I've given it a name, Family Communication Helper. I've uploaded an image using this button here. This is something that I used image generation separately to create, and then I uploaded it. I've provided it a description. This ends up becoming user-facing, so you'll see it here on the right. And then I've given it instructions. So these instructions are where I'm telling ChatGPT who it is helping, how it should write, what to prioritize. So in this case, the instructions say things like write in plain language, be family friendly as you're building family communications, adapt tone and length, ask clarifying questions when needed, assume the teacher stays in control of the final message. Important part is I don't have to repeat any of that now every time I use this GPT. This context will always feed into this custom GPT. Below these instructions, you have what are called conversation starters. These are not full instructions, they're just realistic ways that a teacher who entering into this GPT, either myself or someone else, if I share it with them, could begin. So things like I want to build a class newsletter, or I have an existing message and I want help revising it, or I need to communicate something and I need your help. Another key piece below this is knowledge. So again, kind of like projects, if there's anything that I want this GPT to reference, I can upload that as knowledge. For this example, think of things like uploading a PDF of old emails that I have sent out to my community in a way that I know I like to communicate. That might be a great example. Here, I generally recommend under recommended model, just clicking no recommended model. That'll keep this GPT up to date as OpenAI releases new models. It prevents you having to think which ones. Generally, the only time we've seen this maybe necessary is if you really need ChatGPT to do deep thinking or deep analysis, you might want to set it for one of the more advanced, slower reasoning models. For most K through 12 use cases, you can just leave this as no recommended models. And then we have some capabilities below that. So these capabilities dictate what you can do within this GPT. So here, I'm turning on web search. That means that this GPT can go out and search on the web as needed. If I didn't think that was necessary for building communications to families, I could also turn this off. I've turned on Canvas. That gives me the ability to use that two-paned experience and edit directly with a GPT. I can create images. And because I probably don't need it here, I've turned off code interpreter and data analysis since that's not really relevant here. And then lastly, we won't get into this in depth, but if you're curious about it, there is documentation on our help center. You can create new actions. These are third-party calls to external systems. If you wanted this GPT to be able to call out to another system, you're welcome to do that. So now I can use any of these prompts that I've pre-uploaded here. I'll click this first one. I could also just send in, my own chat that's separate and not one of these pre-prompted ones. But here it's going to ask me a few questions, and then it's going to start to build. Again, on the back end, it has all of the context that I've coded in the background. If you want to create a new GPT, you can click Explore and then Create up in the top right corner. Oftentimes we've received feedback that it's hard to just start with a blank configure page here, right? It's hard to know exactly what to write here, what to name it, how to create a description. So if you want to have a more conversational back and forth with ChatGPT to co-build this together, you can click this create button, and here I can tell ChatGPT what I'm looking for. I want to build a family communication GPT that takes my tone of voice and creates family-friendly comms. When I send this, ChatGPT will think, and then it'll start to pre-populate this configure piece on the right. I can go back and forth. I can give it feedback. I can ask it to change it. But you'll see that some core behaviors set. So when we go over here, you can see we don't have a name yet, but we do have a description and some instructions. If I don't like them, I can go back to create and continue going back and forth. For folks who are not technical, this is a really great way to start to build a GPT and then double check that you like how it's creating, edit it as needed. One more note here. You do have the ability to share this GPT with other folks. So if you've created it or you have edit access, you can go to edit and I can click share. So this allows me to collaborate with others. So by default, when you create a new GPT, it'll be just accessible to you. You could also share this with different groups. So if your district is rolling out ChatGPT, you'll likely see different groups or roles that you can share this custom GPT out to. If you wanted an entire department to have access or all teachers at your school, you could do that. Alternatively, what I've done here is just given 2 of my coworkers access. You can just add their email. Again, the other option is groups here. Here, I'm giving them access to edit the GPT. Other options are they can just view the settings, but they can't edit them. And then the most restrictive option is they can chat, but they can't look at the settings. They can't edit it at all. So one other example here. Here I've created a standards to instruction translator. The idea here is it transforms really dense standards into clear practical guidance. So we'll put in a concrete example. Idea here is to help teachers make sense of really dense standards language and translate it into instruction, assessment, classroom practice. The instructions that I've put on the back here, if you open up the edit functionality, this tells ChatGPT to explain what standards are, what they actually might look like in the classroom, avoid just like restating the standards word for word, focus on helping educators move from just reading to actually implementing the standards. And then if we go back to the chat that I created, it started to help me think through how I might learn this and then put it into practice. So again, this is just another example. This could be something that you could share if you were an administrator in your district and this is something you wanted to create on behalf of your teachers. This is something that you could create and then share with that larger group. Awesome. So We have hit all of the features today, but we're going to go into Q&A. Before we do that, I would love to quickly flag again, just one more great learning resource. One more time, we just launched the ChatGPT Foundations for Teachers course, a free course on Coursera, and it's built specifically for K through 12 educators. It's a way to go deeper on the foundations for how ChatGPT works, to prompt, to use it responsibly for real classroom and school tasks. So if you enjoyed today's session and you want something that you can come back to on your own time, this is a really great next step. And then again, we're going to take this recording from today. We'll upload it by the end of the week, and it'll be available for replay. So no worries on if you weren't able to jot down notes or try this out yourself. Do want to quickly point out a few additional resources that you can always come back to. So again, you probably access this through the OpenAI Academy. That's our main hub for education-focused content, including replays from sessions like this and any on-demand resources. Within the Academy, there are also curated collections for different roles. So K through 12 education, K through 12 IT and technical staff, district leaders, administrators. And then finally, we also included a link to the OpenAI forum. This is a space to connect with others using AI and different things. And there is a specific place for educators and to stay up to date on what's happening. There's some really wonderful thought leadership there. So we'll send out this link we'll post this link in the description of the event replay that we post on the Academy so that you have access to it. And then finally, if you search ChatGPT for Education LinkedIn on Google, you'll find it really easily. We have this LinkedIn page that has really great announcements, updates, examples from schools that we're seeing live. You can follow along. It's a really wonderful resource. So we're going to go into Q&A for the rest of the session. We have about 10 minutes together. We'll get through as many as we can. So it looks like most of them have been responded to by our moderators, which is wonderful. For visibility, I'll share out some of them if possible. So is the slide deck shareable? We will post these slides to the OpenAI Academy along with the recording. The next question is, why does my dropdown for the ChatGPT model list not include the thinking model? And it depends on what you're accessing for. And oftentimes we are changing the names of some of our models. So this changes all the time. Would recommend reaching out to our support team if you're not seeing what you're expected to. But generally, I would recommend just keeping this on auto. Auto is like a really great feature that we only recently released. I think we should have released it sooner, but it's a great way to just keep ChatGPT on autopilot, and it'll pick models as you go. There were some questions about ChatGPT for Teachers out of the country. Right now, ChatGPT for Teachers is only available in the US, but we are working to expand the capacity to serve other parts of the world. So hopefully we'll make some movement there. We'd really like to get this product out to as many folks as possible. There's a question around someone is coming in from Texas coordinating multilingual communication and interpreter training. They created a GPT for their staff. So they're curious if they're eligible for ChatGPT for educators access. So the product here is called ChatGPT for Teachers. This session we ran today is ChatGPT for Education, but the new product that we recently released is ChatGPT for Teachers. All US K through 12 educators and staff, so both staff and administrators are also eligible, are eligible for this offer. So you just need to verify your educator status through what we call Sheer ID. That's our verification partner before gaining access. It's super easy and it's relatively fast. There was a question about a resource to learn more about study mode. We do have a blog post on study mode. If you search study mode OpenAI blog post, it's available there. We might also upload this link as part of a follow-up on the replay on the Academy as well. Can the study mode be implemented into a learning portal and used to help students prepare for an exam? Great question. At the moment, ChatGPT is only available via ChatGPT, the product itself, not available today in our API. And then there's a question, the last one here is how cross teams can these group features go? Hypothetically, right? Can schools or districts using the same curriculum be added to the same group? That's a really great question. Today, educators from the same district are able to join a workspace not from other districts or other schools. So right now, we're just limiting this to within the district. All right. I think we've gotten through the Q&A questions here. We are so appreciative of you all joining today. This has been a really wonderful session, and appreciate the patience with the live demo bugs. That happens more than you think. It's a part of using a technology that's constantly evolving. Would love to say another thank you for spending time with us today. We know how demanding that your jobs can be. We also know that your time is limited, so we appreciate your willingness to show up, to experiment, to think critically about how these tools might fit into your work. Thank you for the engagement in the Q&A and for the work that you all do every day. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and a happy holiday season if you're celebrating. Thanks, folks.